Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Dr. Lonnie Herman, who's the creator of the Rapid Health Restoration System. We'll be talking today about quantum energized medicine. Lonnie, welcome back to the program.
Hi, great to be here again. I appreciate this. And let's share this amazing healing with the world.
Yeah, when what little I know about this topic, which is about, two headlines worth, I have a feeling that quantum energized medicine would be about a 4-day weekend seminar, and still you're scratching the surface. So I know that we're just going to be touching on the basics, but get us started with first, let's define what is quantum energized medicine.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll tell you, I'm going to quote, I believe this is an actual true quote from one of the most brilliant minds that ever existed here on this planet, Nikola Tesla. And hopefully everybody knows who he was. And he made there's a quote from him that says, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so there are different physicists out there, like some people have probably studied physics in college. How fast does a ball drop from a certain weighted ball drop from the top of a building and gravity and all that. We have to calculate those things. But there's also physics called biophysics. I won't get too deep into the science, but biophysics and quantum physics. And what these scientists have discovered is that energy, everything is related to energy. Even all matter is energy. The whole body, the whole human body is made of energy. The different infections, the different infections that cause disease in the human body, whether it's the influenza virus or a staph bacteria infection or syphilis, these all different organisms have different frequencies. And the same goes for different toxins, whether it's the now well-known glyphosate weed killer that's been in our foods, that weed killer spray that's in the foods that gets in the human body and causes problems in the body, causes symptoms in the body, to different heavy metals like mercury, which is a different type of very toxic heavy metal to the nervous system in the human body, different than, let's say, aluminum, or different than chlorine or fluoride. All these different toxins, and there's many more, all these different toxins, what these scientists, these biophysicists discovered is that they have different frequencies. So what we can understand now, what has been discovered, and this I mentioned in our other interview that we did about water memory, what scientists discovered is that we can actually use the frequency, the energy, the vibration of the infectious organism that caused the disease in the person, that caused the symptoms in the person. When we can match it with its own exact specific frequency, something incredible happens. The organism, the infected cell with the organism in it, let's say, for example, there's a human cell that's infected by a parasite, and now we can bombard the parasite with its own exact specific frequency, and something incredible occurs. The cell that's infected with that organism, it vibrates at such a high level that it just dissolves, which means it kills the organism will just die. It will just die. There's what's called a mortal oscillatory rate, MOR, mortal oscillatory rate. So let's say, for example, a patient had asthma, and the asthma was caused by, we find in our type of exam, or the type of exam that I do, I find that there's a staph bacteria infection in the lungs. I find that there are some dental anesthesia chemicals in the lungs, not blaming the dentist again. I find that there's a streptococcus pneumonia bacteria in the lungs. We can use the exact frequencies with specific quantum energized formulas that we formulate in our laboratory, designed, customized for the patient, to knock out those different chemicals, the dental anesthetic from the lungs, the staph infection from the lungs, the influenza virus, or the mold infection, or anything, or any parasite. We can knock it out of the body with these specific quantum energized formulas. There are certain scientists, certain even MDs around the world, and people could look this up online. I won't mention specific names, without their permission. But there are certain physicians around the world who are well known, who are top-selling, best-selling authors that have recognized this as well, and they are trying to implement certain different strategies similar to what I'm doing here in my clinic with people who come to my clinic from around the world to help them heal from these chronic diseases, where they're able to actually provide different types of specific frequency energized, if we can call it quote unquote medicine, quantum energized medicine to the human body, and the body will heal itself because it will literally, similar to what homeopathy is. If anybody knows what that is, homeopathy is under the principle of like cures like. We can take the like frequency of that same like infection, and then the body will just rid that infection from the organ. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it brings up a question or an interesting observation when you were talking about let's say the asthma, and you have the frequency that matches that, and then it dissolves. The interesting thing to me is it's only like laser targeting that infected or affected cell. All the other, it's not doing any other damage. Because there's no damage to be done. It's only looking for the like cell to then, almost like a magnet. So this isn't like wreaking havoc through your system. This is like, I'm seeking and destroying. Oh, this cell, there it is. Zap, done.
You're correct. Perfect.
Okay. And, interestingly enough, we're talking about quantum energized medicine. Well, if I know that, we have to be careful with Google, but if you Google the word quote unquote energy medicine, it's an actual branch or alternative medicine. So it's not, this is not something that is like new and unproven. This has been around for quite a while, all based on vibration and energy.
Sure. And it's not specifically, I'm sorry to just add to that, it's not specifically a drug medicine, quote unquote, that's produced by the, pharmaceutical industry.
I guess it would be something where someone would say it actually works with your body.
True. It works with your body. It works with your own energy, and your body will do the job to defeat the organism or remove the specific exact toxin that's making the symptom occur, and then just letting the body restore itself back to normal. That's why we call it the rapid health restoration system.
Yeah.
Because it literally helps the body restore itself back to its optimal health when we can rid the causes of the disease safely and effectively, rid those causes with this method.
So you gave a couple of examples, and I think that, it could be like literally a 4-year PhD program to say, how does it work? But, talk a little bit more about the how do you locate the what needs to be treated, like in this case, like these cells are affected with X, whatever that you're looking for. But then how does the energized medicine work where like you literally are like programming, energy medicine to go seek and destroy? How does that work? Because you personally, as the practitioner, have to know where to treat and then what to send for the treatment.
Right. Yeah. So it is a bit of a long discussion. I'm glad you asked. And I will say this, a couple of points I'm going to make here is that in my website, I offer a free download of my ebook about how people can reverse these incurable diseases, quote unquote, incurable diseases with quantum energized medicine protocol. So when people begin to read that book, which is very easy to read, it's all in layman's terms. There's no medical terminology in there to confuse people. It maybe takes about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer for the person to read through this. Easy to read, easy to follow, and quick read of my ebook. There is a video link on the last page of my ebook, which when people click on this link, it takes them to a private page on my website. And on that page, there is a video where I describe sort of an introduction into the method that I'm doing. So let me just start out by saying that because it does take a bit of more of a description, as you said, like a 4-year PhD to get this across to people. But what we're able to do, we have samples that biophysicists discovered and created of all these different infections, specifically these different infections, whether it's E. coli bacteria, or it's syphilis, or it's gonorrhea, or it's chlamydia, or it's enterococcus bacteria, or staph, or strep bacteria. I have samples of these individually labeled for which exact organism is in the sample vial. The same goes for different molds. The same goes for different fungal infections that get in the body. The same for parasitic infections and all the different viruses that are out there that invade our body, that any one, that or two or three or 10 different viruses that have invaded our bodies. The same goes for different toxins. I have samples of hundreds of the different heavy metals and antibiotic residues that are left in the body after people use those in the past. There are different surgical chemicals, different anesthetic chemicals, as well as pesticides, and a long list of different toxins, mold toxins that get in the human body and cause disease. So with that said, I have different samples of all these different infections and toxins that were labeled for exactly what they are, that were biophysicists had discovered and created for us to use. As the same goes for what these scientists discovered, the same goes for different parts of the human body. So, for example, the thyroid gland is a gland that helps the body produce hormones to help regulate brain and body function. And we have another gland called the pituitary gland in the brain that helps to regulate and create hormones for body function. It's in a different part of the body. Thyroid's in the throat, the pituitary's in the brain. Let's go with another one, the prostate gland in a man. It's in a totally different end of the body that makes different hormones. Or let's say an adrenal gland makes different hormones. These glands are named different because they're, number one, located in different parts of the body. Number two, they make different hormones to help regulate the body. But also these glands, what these scientists, these biophysicists discovered, is that they have their own individual frequency. So if we sort of look at like an FM radio station, for those of us who remember the FM radio dial in the car, because now there's like iTunes and other places to hear music, but the FM radio dial, when we turn it on and we turn that radio dial from, let's say, 100.7 frequency to 103.5 frequency, those different frequencies will carry different information, different music, and different DJs and different commercials. Well, to the human ear, we don't hear those radio waves that are in the air around us unless we have the radio tool to pick it up, right? Yeah. So what these scientists discovered is that all different parts of our body have different frequencies. So the thyroid is different than the prostate, is different than an ovary, it's different than the human stomach, it's different than a kidney. The left kidney is separate from the right kidney. The lungs are different than the brain. So what we have are samples of these different parts of the body. And we have a testing device that sort of, it's a metal, made out of metal, aluminum, and a copper wire that somebody holds onto this device, where when it's just like how a jumper cable carries signals from a good battery to a dead battery, and we could start up the car. We don't have to read it happening. We don't have to take engineering or physics class to see that the energy travels through the jumper cable. We buy it. We know because we started up the car that had a dead battery just a minute or 2 or 5 minutes ago. So we know the energy traveled through the metal. So with this device, when somebody, not a computer, and I'm not using electronics, I'm using the body's own reflex system. So just like a knee-jerk reflex or a pupil reflex, right? The person feels the knee jerk in their body, they see it. They don't see or feel the pupil reflex when there's light shining in the eye. But the physician can watch the knee jerk reflex. The physician who's testing the patient can watch the pupil reflex. So let me wrap it together here. So when somebody's holding onto the testing device that we have, this testing platform made of the aluminum and the copper wire, when I take a sample of, let's say, for example, influenza virus, and the person says they have the flu, I'll make it really simple here. When we take the influenza virus sample and put it on the equipment that they're holding onto, the testing platform they're holding onto, the body will reveal to me that it's stressed by the influenza only when the influenza is in their body. If the influenza virus is not infecting the brain or their lungs or any part of their body, the body will not show a stress reaction when they're connected to that virus. So let's just say we put the influenza virus sample down, that the person's holding onto this equipment. The body shows me its stress reaction that I know how to observe. And now I want to ask the body what part of the body it's in, that influenza virus. So I'll take a sample of, let's say, the human stomach that's in a vial. I take the sample, I put it on the equipment. I'm asking the body to go from a stressed state with the influenza to a non-stressed state. Is it the influenza has to come out of the human stomach? When I put that stomach sample down in the equipment, the body doesn't come out of its stress state. The body is telling me influenza is not in the stomach, at least not its primary part. I put the stomach sample away. I take a sample of the lungs. when I put the human lung sample down, that human body that I'm testing will instantly, within milliseconds, test its own lungs, scan its lungs within milliseconds, and find if the influenza is in the lungs. So let's say that it is. When I put the lung sample down next to the influenza virus sample, and the body goes from a stress state from the influenza virus to now a non-stress state, what does that mean? Let's say let me give another example. I shine a light in the pupil reflex occurs, the constriction of the pupil happens. When I take away that stressor, the light that made the pupil reflex occur, when I take away the light from the human eye, the reflex disappears and the pupil dilates because we're taking away the cause of the stress that made the pupil reflex occur. So when I put the influenza virus down, the body shows me stress, and I put the lungs down and the body comes out of stress. The body's telling me right there in that second, get the influenza out of their lungs. It's a direct answer that way from the body.
When you were describing that, it reminded me of something that I personally experienced in a different setting. So I'm going to explain it to you and tell me if this is very similar, because I think a lot of people might be like, wait, you're touching this and then it's telling you.
Right.
Well, this I feel like is really common. What I experienced. I used to work when I was going to college many moons ago. I used to work as a plumber assistant, and I remember the owner of the company. We had to find these water lines underground, and maybe you know where I'm going with this.
Dowsing, yes.
Yeah, I still remember the look the smirk on his face because I was a college student, and there was a couple other ones, and he was like, "Watch this. I'll show you where they are." And he holds in his hands these two copper, tubes that were shaped like an L, one in each hand, and he starts walking. And he's just walking, and all of a sudden they start turning. And as soon as they turned where they crossed, he makes or spray paints or whatever, makes a mark, keeps walking, and all of a sudden here is this whole track, and we start digging, and lo and behold, there it is. Isn't that the same concept as what you're talking about here? Because if he walked 20 feet over to the right or left, those copper, copper tubes were not going to move.
That's right. Only when it found it's the energy. The whole earth is energy. The whole universe is energy. Our bodies are energy. So you're exactly right. That's a very good example. Thank you for sharing that. And sometimes this is a bit difficult for some people to grasp because their paradigm that they have been so, if we can say, brought up in, they've never escaped, is just you have to run a blood test, which I used to do, only to diagnose something from a blood test or an MRI or an X-ray or something. And those methods can't find everything. And that's why you have to step outside of the common, let's say, conventional paradigm when we really want to figure out what's causing the disease. So that was and help the person overcome their disease. So that's a great example you brought up, because that proves right there, and people can look that up online. They can go to YouTube or somewhere else and find dowsing like that, like you described it, and see it happen. It's real. So we're able to pick up the energy. And then when the quantum energized medicine, these quantum energized formulas that we customize for people, when I go back and I find that it was the lungs with the influenza virus, which I brought up in the water memory discussion that we had, that we enjoyed together, is that we can actually send a signal into the water of the perfect, healthy human lung tissue and hybrid that with the sample, the frequency of the influenza virus that we found in the lung with this exam. So now when we provide that quantum energized formula, some people may call it a remedy, some people call them energized drops, that when we provide this to the person with the embedded, imprinted frequency of the lungs and of the infectious influenza that's infecting that person's lungs, when they take that highly energized liquid drop, one dose is all it takes. The body's going to use that to go right to the lungs, beat up that influenza and get it out of there. And then the respiratory stress stops. That is if it's only caused by the influenza. So without getting too deep into, it could just take hours to describe this. I have created a system where I'm able to find whatever it is, literally whatever it is, through different stress type of exam strategies that I've developed to find, is it only the influenza virus, for example, in the person's lungs? Is it coming from an infected root canal in their mouth that's infecting their lungs? Possible. Is it coming from mold that's in their lungs? Is it coming from cigarette smoke that even though they quit 20 years ago, but they're still having a problem breathing? Is it because there's tobacco smoke and tobacco toxins still in their lungs. And the list goes on. So I developed a very unique series of skills to be able to diagnose what it is, provide this perfect frequency quantum energized medicine, and the results are just impressive. And we've got so many before and after, not only testimonials but pictures of people who have overcome incredible disease with this work. It's
you've mentioned
enjoyable.
many types of conditions that this treats, and what you just described there is many layers and cascading effects of. It's not just one thing like, oh, A plus B equals C. It could be this piece that impacts that piece, which then cascades to this piece, which is causing the thing. So you can get to the root of the cause. And let's wrap up with this, Lonnie, because I think this is on the forefront of people's minds too. A, is this method safe? And then what should I expect during a session when you're, investigating and finding these causes and things like that?
Great. So safe, yes, very effective and very safe. We do have to understand about the individual, though, because if somebody's got terrible kidney disease, stage 4 kidney failure, we've got to understand, set their expectations, but also understand some of the limits that may be there within the organ that's so diseased. And that takes a whole nother discussion. But it's very safe. We can't hurt that person's kidney. It's just that sometimes when people are cleaning out their organs and brain and any part of the body, bone marrow, muscles, lymph, any part of the body that we can address with this work, is that sometimes the body is going to be aggravated as it's healing. So in a true healing process, different than with conventional medicine, let's say somebody had a strep throat and they took an antibiotic to get rid of the strep bacteria so they can swallow and speak and the throat's not red and it's not swollen and they can talk and they can sleep and everything is fine. Well, did they really beat the whole strep bacteria, or did the strep bacteria, some of it die, but some of it, there's antibiotic resistant germs. You've heard that term probably.
Yeah.
So what happens if some of the strep died, but some of the strep didn't die and it went over to the person's brain, or it went to their kidney, or it went to their stomach, and it caused other symptoms down the road or immediately? So you don't, with that method of the conventional medicine, most of these infections are not really beaten. With this work, the body has the ability to beat up that infection that's in the organ, extract it from the organ, and expel it from the body. So it's very safe. It's just that there may be aggravation in the healing because the infection that was the strep throat left through, let's say, their skin and creates a rash on their chest. And it may not be comfortable, but the body's expelling through the skin, or maybe they have diarrhea because it's expelling that strep infection through the colon. So there are certain strategies we've set up in here, and it took years to develop this, to be able to aid those different detox organs so that they're not so stressed as things come out of it. So it is safe. We've never seen anybody get injured from this at all whatsoever. It just might not be the most pleasant detox or the most pleasant disinfection experience. What should somebody expect? Number one, I do a very thorough, I want to see people's medical records from any diagnosis, anything that was done with them that brought on their diagnosis, and any follow-up exams or laboratories or imaging studies that have been done with people. So I review very thoroughly and ask them specific questions that are usually not asked for when they've gone to their general doctor or other alternative practitioners. We've got to be able to understand some great details about their history and about what may have brought on their disease and what's keeping the disease going in their body. So that takes about an hour to an hour and a half after I've reviewed the records that they send me. And then in the exam here, it's usually just one day that I see a person to get them started. And the exam, for some people, it's 4-hour visit. It could be a 6 or 7 hour day with me and that one individual to get a very thorough exam. The whole exam process, it would take quite some time to explain. It's just that we're able to use certain skills and certain strategies that are going to localize the exam steps for whether it is an asthmatic patient that we've got to find relief for them, or it's a skin disease, or they have both, or there's a brain fog, or there's a migraine. There's certain steps that I've figured out to do in the exam process, but it's non-invasive, it's painless. We're not using any kind of
But
computer.
those two things right there are the biggies. Non-invasive.
Yeah.
Don't invade my personal space, and it's not painful.
Yeah.
So
No
good.
needles, no surgery,
Yeah.
no scalpels, nothing like that. But the depth of examination findings that I'm discovering with this, and sometimes the most rapid healing is so impressive. So I'll tell you that the people can see the incredible recoveries that are being made. We've got it on our website and on the YouTube channel that I have, and it's just incredible. So it would take me quite some time to explain that. But again, on that page, the last page of my ebook, somebody can click on that link. They can watch that 42-minute video. I get into some detail about that.
Well, Lonnie, let's wrap up with how can people learn more, get that ebook, see that video, and then reach out and connect with you and see how you can potentially help them as well.
Excellent. My website, www.drlonnieherman.com. That's DRLONNIEHERMAN.com, drlonnieherman.com. When they go to my website, there's so much information there. The ebook is free. It pops up on the screen within a few seconds of logging into my website. And there's links in there to go to my YouTube channel from my website, as well as Facebook page and Instagram and so on. So there's a lot of places where they can find my work, and it's my pleasure to help people. There's no greater reward than seeing somebody come out of their disease. It's an awesome experience.
Well, thank you so much for coming back on, Lonnie. It was really a great pleasure talking with you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.